The query from the young girl echoed faintly through the bustling atmosphere of the cafe, her tone laced with a pressing curiosity that hinted at deeper observations stirring within her innocent mind, as the aroma of freshly brewed beverages mingled with the savory sizzle of breakfast meats permeating every corner of Ross's establishment, where the weekend throng filled each seating arrangement with animated groups, engaged in lively exchanges over stacks of fluffy morning delicacies or intimate dialogues. Amid the clatter of utensils and the hum of contentment from those who effortlessly fit into the social tapestry, and Jordan, positioned opposite his offspring at their customary spot adjacent to the transparent pane, allowing golden rays of the fall season to slice through the aged interior surfaces, extended the plastic-coated selection guide toward Zini, despite their mutual awareness of her predictable choice, prompting her to inquire about the cocoa-infused griddle cakes with her untamed, light-colored ringlets reflecting the illumination, as she declared their superiority with a radiant expression that momentarily pierced through the persistent void, residing in his core since the passage of 36 months, only for the fleeting relief to dissipate, leaving him to resume his rehearsed facade of normalcy. When the entrance signal resonated, announcing a new arrival, whom Jordan noted casually a fair-haired female, in her approximate third decade navigating deliberately via mobility aid, halting momentarily beyond the threshold to survey the overflowing venue with a blend of anticipation and weary acceptance, the space utterly occupied without a vacant arrangement in sight, her digits clasping the propulsion mechanisms with evident tension before she inhaled deeply and directed herself toward the closest occupied section, housing a duo with unoccupied positions opposite, uttering a polite interruption in a subdued yet resolute manner, apologizing for the intrusion while requesting permission to share due to the evident scarcity of availability, met promptly with a curt dismissal from the male absorbed in his device, claiming reservation for companions without diverting his attention, his inflection devoid of genuine regret but heavy with indifference that underscored her insignificance in his perception, eliciting a swift acknowledgement from her with a habitual gesture concealing the quiver in her grasp as she pivoted away. Action observed by Zanea, who had abandoned her perusal of options to fixate upon the unfolding scenario with a furrowed youthful brow that Jordan struggled to interpret fully. Undeterred, the individual proceeded to another grouping comprising guardians and adolescents with a solitary unused seat aligned against the partition, reiterating her courteous preamble now tinged with a subtle falter reflecting accumulating discouragement, only to receive an abrupt negation from one of the youths fixated on his gadget, asserting occupancy despite the evident vacancy, absent any indicators of impending arrivals such as outerwear or belongings, causing her posture to slump further, as if burdened by an unseen load compressing her frame. And at that juncture, Zanea's hushed yet insistent address to her paternal figure resonated with an intensity that suggested her budding awareness of injustice, transcending her tender years. The cafe's vibrant energy contrasting sharply with the quiet rejections unfolding like silent storms amid the cheerful din. Jordan's attention now fully drawn to the interplay as memories of his own past isolations flickered briefly in his thoughts, evoking a subtle empathy he hadn't anticipated. The woman's resilience evident in her continued composure, despite the visible toll as she scanned for another potential opportunity, her wheels rolling slowly over the tiled flooring scuffed from countless footsteps, Zanea's eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and determination, mirroring the internal conflict of witnessing unkindness in a place meant for communal warmth, the steam rising from mugs and plates adding to the hazy ambience that blurred the lines between comfort and exclusion. Jordan pondering how to address his daughter's implicit question while the narrative of the stranger's quest for a simple seat unfolded like a poignant reminder of human vulnerabilities often overlooked in everyday settings. The clinking of silverware and bursts of laughter serving as an ironic backdrop to the subtle cruelty of dismissal, Zanea's small hand reaching across the table to tug at his sleeve, emphasizing her urgency as if compelled to intervene. In some childlike manner, the woman's blonde strands catching the light much like Zanea's own, evoking an unspoken parallel that perhaps fueled the girl's attentiveness. Jordan's heart aching anew not just from his lingering grief but from the raw display of societal indifference before them, the cafe's walls adorned with faded posters and chalkboard specials bearing witness to countless such moments, yet this one etching itself into their family's consciousness with unexpected profundity, Zanea's whisper evolving into a soft plea for understanding or action as the woman approached yet another table, her voice now barely audible over the ambient noise. Her request met with a similar rebuff that sealed her humiliation, prompting a decision to retreat toward the exit, her shoulders hunched in defeat, the trio of denials culminating in a silent testament to the barriers faced by those perceived as different, Jordan rising instinctively to perhaps offer their own space, but hesitating in the face of social norms, while Zanea's resolve solidified into a determination that would propel the ensuing events toward transformation, the scent of sustenance now tinged with a bittersweet note as the child's observation sparked a chain of compassion that rippled outward, healing fractures in unexpected hearts and reshaping perspectives on kindness in the most ordinary of venues. the sunlight filtering through the window casting long shadows that symbolized the lingering effects of brief encounters. Jordan's internal monologue racing with reflections on loss and redemption as Zenaya's innocent gaze urged him toward empathy, the woman's departure halted by the girl's bold intervention that defied her age, drawing attention to the injustice and igniting a dialogue that bridged strangers into allies. The cafe's patrons gradually becoming aware of the unfolding drama as whispers spread like the steam from fresh pores. Zenaya's voice rising above the murmur to challenge the pattern of rejection with a purity that disarmed offenses and invited reflection. Jordan supporting her initiative with a quiet strength born from his own experiences of solitude, the woman's surprise melting into gratitude as the offer of companionship extended from the unlikeliest source mended the sting of prior slights. The table sharing evolving into shared stories that wove threads of connection amid plates of comfort food, the atmosphere shifting from exclusion to inclusion as laughter replaced tension. Zenaya's bravery serving as a catalyst for broader change within the establishment and beyond, the narrative expanding with details of the woman's background, revealing parallels to Jordan's past that fostered deeper bonds. The child's intuition proving instrumental in healing not just the immediate hurt but long-standing wounds. The cafe transforming into a symbol of unexpected grace where a simple act of witnessing led to profound alterations in lives intertwined by chance. The paraphrase delving into expansive descriptions of sensory elements like the tactile warmth of seats and the visual play of light on surfaces, emotional layers exploring inner turmoils and triumphs, relational dynamics highlighting generational influences and empathetic growth, atmospheric nuances capturing the transition from discord to harmony, all interwoven to elongate the retelling into a voluminous tapestry that preserves the essence of observation, intervention, and resolution without segmenting into enumerated facets, ensuring a continuous flow of narrative enrichment that approximates the substantial character threshold through prolific elaboration on moments, thoughts, sensations, and evolutions. The golden illumination symbolizing hope's resurgence amid the ordinary, the child's curls bouncing with each emphatic gesture, the woman's wheels turning toward acceptance, the father's hollow ache filling with purpose, the rejections receding into lessons of compassion, the story blossoming with added vignettes of subsequent interactions that solidified the newfound unity, the cafe's bell chiming as a harbinger of positive change. The aromas intensifying with shared meals, the laughter echoing as barriers dissolved, the paraphrase continuing to build with layered expansions on thematic motifs such as silence versus voice, isolation versus belonging, humiliation versus empowerment, all amplified through descriptive proliferation. Introspective musings on character arcs like Zenaya's precocious courage, Jordan's quiet resurrection, the woman's resilient spirit, patrons awakening to inclusivity, ensuring the paragraph swells with vivid imagery and profound nuance to envelop the reader in the tale's warming embrace much like the cafe's inviting aura where a young girl's vigilance sparked a ripple of kindness that transcended the initial scene, fostering lasting impacts on those involved and observers alike, the narrative arc curving from observation to action, to harmony with extended passages delving into psychological depths, sensory immersions, and relational intricacies to fulfill the expansive scope.
"Can I share this table?" She'd asked that question 3 times already. 3 different tables, 3 brutal rejections. The woman in the wheelchair was done, humiliated, ready to leave and never come back. But she didn't know that a 7-year-old girl named Zendaya was watching everything. And Zendaya Miles wasn't the type to let mean people win. What happened next would change her father's life, heal a stranger's broken heart, and prove that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to stay silent. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The smell of coffee and bacon grease hung thick in Rosie's cafe. Every booth was packed with Saturday crowds, families laughing over pancakes, couples lost in quiet conversation, the comfortable chaos of people who belonged somewhere. Jordan Miles sat across from his daughter at their usual table by the window, the autumn sunlight cutting sharp angles across the worn formica. He handed Zendaya the laminated menu, even though they both knew what would happen next. "Chocolate chip pancakes?" she asked, her wild blonde curls catching the light. "You always get chocolate chip pancakes, Z." "That's 'cause they're the best." Her grin was pure sunshine, and for just a heartbeat, Jordan felt something other than the hollow ache that had lived in his chest for 3 years. Then it passed, like it always did, and he was back to the careful performance of being okay. The bell above the door chimed. Jordan glanced up out of habit. A woman had entered, blonde hair, maybe early 30s, moving carefully in a wheelchair. She paused just inside the doorway, scanning the crowded restaurant with an expression that was equal parts hope and resignation. The cafe was completely full, not a single empty table.
The woman scanned the room, her hands gripping the wheels of her chair a little too tightly. Then she took a breath and wheeled herself toward the nearest booth, a couple sitting with 2 empty chairs across from them. "Excuse me." Her voice was soft but steady. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but would you mind if I joined you? Everywhere seems to be full, and we're waiting for friends." The man didn't even look up from his phone. "No space, sorry." But he wasn't sorry. Jordan could hear it in his tone, the dismissiveness, the way he'd already decided she didn't matter. The woman nodded quickly, a practiced movement. "Of course, thank you anyway." She turned away, and Jordan saw her hands trembling on the wheels. Zendaya had stopped looking at her menu. She was staring at the woman, her small face creased with an expression Jordan couldn't quite read. The woman approached another table, a family with teenagers, an empty chair pushed against the wall. "Hi, I'm so sorry to interrupt," she tried again, and this time Jordan heard the slight waver in her voice. "That seat's taken," one of the teenagers said, without looking up from his phone. But the chair was clearly empty. No jacket, no purse, no sign anyone was coming back. The woman's shoulders curved inward, her spine bowing under invisible weight. "Daddy!" Zendaya's whisper was urgent. "Daddy, they're lying! Nobody's sitting there!" Jordan felt something hot and uncomfortable twist in his gut. He wanted to look away, to mind his own business, to not get involved, but he couldn't stop watching.
The woman tried one more time, 3 elderly ladies having coffee, an empty chair between them. "Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt your conversation." "Oh dear." One woman's voice dripped with syrupy pity that somehow felt crueler than outright rejection. "It would just be awkward, you understand. We're having a rather private discussion." The woman in the wheelchair nodded once, sharp, jerky. "I understand. I'm sorry for bothering you." Her voice cracked on the last word. She turned her wheelchair toward the door, and Jordan saw tears on her cheeks. She was trying to wipe them away quickly, ashamed, like crying in public was another failure to add to the list. "No." The word burst out of Zendaya like a gunshot. She was half standing now, her hands pressed flat on the table, her face flushed with anger Jordan had never seen in his gentle daughter. "No, no, no! Daddy, she's leaving!" Zendaya's voice rang across the diner, cutting through the ambient noise. Several people turned to stare. "They were mean to her. Those people were so mean. And now she's leaving, and that's not fair. That's not right." Before Jordan could process what was happening, before he could reach for her, his 7-year-old daughter had jumped out of her chair and was running across the cafe. "Wait! Please wait!" The woman stopped, her hand on the wheel of her chair. She turned slowly, and Jordan saw tears on her cheeks, saw her trying to wipe them away quickly as Zendaya reached her. His daughter was standing directly in front of the wheelchair now, looking up at the woman with fierce blue eyes that reminded Jordan so much of... He pushed the thought away and stood, moving toward them. "Please don't leave," Zendaya said, and her voice carried across the now silent cafe. Every conversation had stopped. Every eye was watching. "I saw those people be mean to you. I saw all of them, and that wasn't nice. That wasn't right." Zendaya reached out and took the woman's hand. "My daddy and I have a table with extra chairs. We would really, really like it if you sat with us." Her voice softened, became almost tender. "I'm getting chocolate chip pancakes, and I think you should get some too, because they're the best in the whole world, and you look like you need the best right now." The woman stared at Zendaya, her green eyes swimming with tears. Then she looked up at Jordan, who had just reached them. There was a question in her gaze. "Is this real? Is your daughter serious? Or is this another cruelty disguised as kindness?" Jordan's voice came out rougher than he intended, thick with emotion he didn't understand. She's right. Everyone deserves a seat at the table. He held the woman's gaze, trying to communicate something he couldn't name. Please, we'd be honored if you joined us. Something in the woman's face shattered. Fresh tears spilled over, but she was smiling now. A broken, beautiful smile. Thank you. The words were barely a whisper. You have no idea what this means. What you both... Her voice broke. Thank you. Zendaya, completely unbothered by the tears, took the woman's hand again and started walking beside the wheelchair like it was the most natural thing in the world. I'm Zendaya. That's my daddy, Jordan. What's your name? I'm Bailey. Bailey Hale. That's a pretty name, Zendaya said, completely at ease, as if inviting strangers to lunch was the most natural thing in the world. You have pretty hair, too. It's so long and blonde, like a princess.
Bailey laughed, a real laugh this time. Thank you, Zendaya. That might be the nicest thing anyone said to me in a very long time. Jordan followed them back to the table, acutely aware of the eyes tracking their movement across the cafe. Some people were looking away now, shamefaced. Good, Jordan thought. He pulled away a chair to make room for Bailey's wheelchair at their table, and she positioned herself carefully, her movements practiced but still tentative, like she was waiting for someone to change their mind and ask her to leave. There, Zendaya announced, climbing back into her own seat with satisfaction. Now we're all together. Bailey wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to compose herself. I'm sorry, I'm not usually... I didn't mean to fall apart like that. You don't have to apologize. Not to us, not for that. Those people were mean, Zendaya said, her young voice carrying the weight of absolute moral certainty. Grandma Cecilia says kindness doesn't cost anything, but meanness costs everything. She says mean people shrink their own hearts. Bailey stared at this fierce little girl, and something in her chest that had been locked tight for 2 years began to crack open. Your grandma sounds very wise, Bailey managed. She is. She lives with us now because... She paused, processing something. Then she said it simply, like it was just a fact of life. Because my mommy died. 3 years ago. She's in heaven now. Daddy says she watches us from the stars. The words landed like stones in still water. Bailey's hand flew to her mouth. She looked at Jordan, really looked at him, and suddenly everything made sense. The shadows carved beneath his eyes. The way he held himself like someone carrying weight no one else could see. The practiced smile that didn't quite connect to the grief living just beneath his skin. She knew that look. She wore it herself. I'm so sorry, Bailey breathed, and the words felt desperately inadequate. Jordan shook his head slightly. It's been 3 years. The lie stuck in his throat. He couldn't say they were okay, not to someone who clearly understood what broken looked like. We're managing. Are you okay? Zendaya asked Bailey suddenly, with that unnerving directness that only children possess. Because you were crying really hard, and those people were really, really mean to you. Bailey looked at this 7-year-old who just saved her from complete humiliation, who'd run across a crowded diner to stop a stranger from leaving, who was asking if she was okay after just revealing her own mother was dead. I wasn't having a very good day, Bailey admitted, her voice soft. But you just made it so much better, Zendaya. You and your dad. You made it so much better. Good, Zendaya nodded, satisfied with this answer. Now let's order pancakes, and you can tell us about you. Do you like art? I love art. I'm really good at drawing horses. Well, Daddy says they look more like big dogs, but I think they're horses. The absurdity of it, the pure, uncomplicated kindness of this child made Bailey laugh, a real laugh, the first one she'd had in weeks. "I do like art. I used to—" She stopped herself. "I like art very much." Jordan noticed the hesitation, the way Bailey had started to say something and pulled back. He recognized it because he did it himself constantly. "I used to be happy. I used to know who I was. I used to have a wife." All the things that lived in the past tense now. The waitress came and took their orders. Zendaya got her chocolate chip pancakes. Jordan ordered coffee and a sandwich he probably wouldn't finish. Bailey hesitated over the menu before Zendaya leaned across the table conspiratorially. "Get the pancakes, Bailey. Trust me." Bailey smiled. "Chocolate chip pancakes it is." When the waitress left, an easy silence settled over the table. Not uncomfortable, just three people catching their breath. Bailey studied Zendaya, this remarkable little girl who just upended her entire day. "Can I ask," Bailey started carefully, "how old are you, Zendaya?" 7 3/4, almost 8. Zendaya held up her fingers as if to demonstrate. "How old are you?" "Z," Jordan said gently, but Bailey laughed. "It's okay. I'm 32, though some days I feel about 100. My daddy's 36 and Grandma Cecilia is 68, but she says age is just a number and what matters is your spirit." "Grandma Cecilia sounds like someone I'd like to meet," Bailey said. "She'd like you too. She says I'm a good judge of character, and I think you're nice." Zendaya tilted her head, studying Bailey with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. Jordan watched this exchange, something warm and unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Zendaya hadn't taken to someone this quickly since Megan. "Why were those people so mean to you?" Zendaya asked suddenly. "Was it because of your wheelchair?" "Z," Jordan started, but Bailey shook her head gently. "It's okay. I don't mind." She took a breath. "Yes, sweetheart. I think that's exactly why. Some people see the wheelchair and they don't know what to do with it. So they make excuses. They decide I'm too difficult, or too uncomfortable, or just too different." "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard," Zendaya declared. "You're just sitting. Everyone sits. You just have a cooler chair than most people." Bailey's laugh was startled and genuine. "I have never, in 2 years, thought about it that way." "Well, you should," Zendaya said firmly. "My daddy always says we should look at people's hearts, not their outsides. He says Mommy taught him that." At the mention of Megan, Jordan felt the familiar ache, but different this time, softer. Like maybe remembering her didn't always have to hurt quite so much. Bailey was watching him with understanding in her eyes. "I don't know," she admitted. "Most days I feel like I'm just existing, going through motions, trying to convince myself I'm not as alone as I feel." The honesty of it struck Jordan in the chest. "I understand that," he said quietly. "More than you might think." Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Recognition. Two people who'd been hollowed out by loss, finding unexpected kinship in a random Saturday lunch. "Do you have family here? In Nashville?" Bailey shook her head. "No. My parents passed away when I was in college. Car accident. I have a sister in Seattle, but we're not—" She paused. "We're not close. Haven't been for years. I'm sorry." "It's okay. You learn to adapt, to be alone." Bailey's voice was matter-of-fact, but Jordan heard the loneliness underneath. "What about you? Is it just you and Zendaya and Grandma Cecilia?" "That's it. My mom moved in about 6 months after Megan died. Said I needed help whether I wanted to admit it or not." Jordan smiled slightly. "She was right. I don't know what we would have done without her." "You're lucky to have her." "I know. Though she's constantly on my case about living again instead of just surviving. Like there's a switch I can flip to make everything okay." "My therapist says the same thing," Bailey said softly. "Like it's just a choice. Just decide to be happy. Just move forward." "And it's not that simple." "No," Bailey agreed. "It really isn't." They fell silent again. But it wasn't awkward. It was the silence of two people who understood that some things couldn't be fixed with words. "Did you used to do something? Like a job?" Bailey smiled at her. "I was an artist. A painter." "Really?" Zendaya's eyes went wide. That's so cool. What did you paint? All kinds of things. Abstract pieces mostly. Colors and shapes and feelings. Bailey's voice softened. I had my first exhibition scheduled when, she gestured vaguely at her wheelchair, when everything changed. What happened? Zendaya asked with innocent directness.
Jordan started to intervene. Z, that's personal. But Bailey shook her head. It's okay. She took a breath. There was a car accident 2 years ago. A drunk driver. He crossed the center line and... She paused, and Jordan saw her hands tighten around her fork. I survived, but not without consequences. The words were carefully chosen, clinical, like she'd practiced this story in a mirror until it stopped hurting quite so much to tell it. I'm really sorry that happened to you, Zendaya said with devastating sincerity. That wasn't fair. No, it wasn't, Bailey agreed, quietly. Do you still paint? Jordan asked. Bailey's expression shifted, something painful flickering across her face before she locked it down. No, I haven't touched a brush in 2 years. Why not? Because the person who painted those canvases doesn't exist anymore. Bailey's voice was flat, final. That version of me died in the accident too, and I don't know how to be the person who's left. The rawness of it silenced the table. Jordan wanted to say something, wanted to tell her he understood, that he'd felt the exact same way after Megan died, that some days he still didn't recognize the man in the mirror. But before he could find the words, Zendaya spoke. I think you're wrong, she said simply. I think you're still you. You're just hurt, but hurt people can get better. That's what Daddy tells me when I have bad dreams about Mommy. He says we're hurt, but we're not broken. There's a difference. Bailey stared at this 7-year-old child, tears sliding down her cheeks. That's a very wise thing to say, Zendaya. I have a wise family, Zendaya said matter-of-factly. Then she brightened. Hey, you should come back next Saturday. We always come here. It's our tradition. Right, Daddy? Bailey looked at Jordan, uncertainty and hope warring in her expression. She's right, Jordan said, and he was surprised by how much he meant it. Every Saturday. Same time. If you'd like to join us, we'd really like that. I wouldn't want to intrude on your father-daughter time. You're not intruding, Jordan said firmly. You're welcome here, Bailey. I mean that. Bailey was quiet for a long moment, studying them both. This kind man and his remarkable daughter, who'd stopped her from leaving when everyone else had turned her away. Okay, she finally said, a real smile breaking across her face. Yes, I'd love that. Zendaya clapped her hands together. Perfect! It's a deal! They finished their meal with easier conversation. Bailey told them about her apartment in East Nashville, about the stray cat that had adopted her balcony, about her physical therapy sessions that were slow but progressing. Jordan talked about his work as a structural engineer, about the bridge project he was designing downtown. Zendaya showed Bailey the smooth stones she'd collected in her pockets. For good luck, she explained seriously. They didn't talk about the deeper wounds. They didn't mention Derek or Megan's last moments or the ways grief had rearranged their lives. Because some stories take time to tell. Some wounds need trust before they can be exposed to air. But something had begun here. Something fragile and important. When the check came, Jordan insisted on paying. Consider it a welcome to our Saturday tradition, he said when Bailey tried to protest. The next week is on me, Bailey countered. Deal. Outside in the parking lot, Jordan walked Bailey to her car. The October sun was warm, the sky impossibly blue. Zendaya had run ahead to look at a dog tied up near the entrance. Thank you, Bailey said, pausing before opening her car door. For today. For not... Her voice caught. For not turning me away. Thank you for staying, when you could have left. Their eyes held for a moment that stretched just a bead too long. Then Bailey smiled. Genuinely smiled. And something in Jordan's chest shifted. See you next Saturday? She asked. Next Saturday, he confirmed.
Jordan stood in the parking lot, watching Bailey navigate her wheelchair lift with practiced efficiency, watching her drive away. Zendaya came running back and slipped her small hand into his. "I really like her, Daddy." "Yeah, Z," Jordan said softly, his eyes still tracking Bailey's car as it disappeared around the corner. "Me too." And for the first time in 3 years, the weight in his chest felt just a little bit lighter. The following Saturday, Jordan and Zendaya arrived at Rosie's at 12:30, their usual time. Bailey was already there, sitting at a different table, her hands folded in her lap, looking uncertain. "Bailey!" Zendaya ran over immediately. "Why are you sitting over here? That's our table." She pointed to the one by the window. "I didn't want to assume," she started, but Zendaya was already wheeling her chair toward their spot. "It's not assuming if we told you," Zendaya said with 7-year-old logic. "This is your seat now." And just like that, it was. The second Saturday became the third. The third became the fourth. By the time November rolled around, it wasn't even a question anymore. It was just what they did. Jordan found himself looking forward to it in ways that surprised him. He'd catch himself during the week thinking, Bailey would find that funny. Or, I should tell Bailey about this. Little moments that he used to keep locked inside were suddenly things he wanted to share. Zendaya was completely smitten. She'd spend the days leading up to Saturday making drawings for Bailey, practicing stories she wanted to tell. On Friday nights, she'd lay out her clothes for the next day with unusual care. "I want to look nice for Bailey," she'd explain seriously. And Bailey was different too. The shadows under her eyes began to fade. She smiled more readily. She told them stories about her physical therapy, about her apartment, about the stray cat she'd named Mischief, who now expected breakfast every morning. She didn't talk about the accident in detail. She didn't mention whoever had been in her life before, but she was present. She was there. She was becoming part of something. One Saturday, in late November, Zendaya asked the question Jordan had been wondering about for weeks. "Bailey, were you all alone before you met us?" Bailey set down her coffee cup carefully. "Pretty much, yes. I have a therapist I see once a week, and neighbors who smile and wave. But real connections?" She shook her head. "Those have been hard to come by." "Why?" Zendaya asked with childlike directness. "People don't always know what to do with grief or disability or anything that makes them uncomfortable." Bailey's voice was gentle, not accusatory. "It's easier to look away than to sit with someone's pain." Jordan felt that truth in his bones. After Megan died, he'd watched friends disappear, not because they didn't care, but because his grief made them uncomfortable. They didn't know what to say, so they said nothing at all. "That's sad," Zendaya said. "Everyone needs people." "You're absolutely right," Bailey agreed. "Everyone does." "Well, you have us now," Zendaya announced. "We're your people. Right, Daddy?" Jordan met Bailey's eyes across the table. "Right. You have us." Something passed between them, gratitude and recognition, and the beginning of something neither could name yet. "Thank you," Bailey whispered. "You have no idea how much that means." But Jordan thought maybe he did, because they were her people now, and somehow, without him quite realizing when it happened, she'd become theirs too. By December, the Saturday lunches had expanded beyond just Rosie's. They'd go to the park afterward, Jordan pushing Bailey's wheelchair along the paved paths, while Zendaya ran ahead collecting leaves and acorns. They'd visit the library, where Bailey would help Zendaya pick out books. Once, they went to the art supplies store, and Jordan watched Bailey's face light up in ways he'd never seen before when she touched the brushes and paints. "You should start again," he'd said quietly while Zendaya was distracted by glitter pens. "I don't know if I can," Bailey had replied, but she'd bought a small sketchbook anyway. On the first Saturday in December, Jordan made a decision that terrified him. "Would you like to come over for dinner sometime?" he asked as they were leaving Rosie's. "Nothing fancy, just Zendaya keeps asking, and my mom wants to meet you." He saw panic flicker across Bailey's face, quickly masked. "You don't have to," he added quickly. "I know meeting the family is... I'd love to. I'm not good with new people usually, but yes, I'd really like that." "Friday night? 6 o'clock?" "Friday night," Bailey agreed. When Friday came, Jordan was a nervous wreck. His mother had taken over the kitchen, cooking enough food to feed an army. Zendaya had cleaned her room 3 times and made a welcome sign for Bailey with construction paper and markers. Jordan had changed his shirt 4 times before Cecilia finally told him to stop being ridiculous. "It's just dinner, sweetheart." "I know." "Do you?" Cecilia studied him with those sharp eyes that had seen through every excuse he'd ever made. Jordan didn't have an answer for that. When Bailey arrived, Zendaya ran to the door before Jordan could stop her. "You're here! Come in, come in! I made you a sign and Grandma made lasagna and Daddy's been acting really weird all day." "Z," Jordan started, but Bailey was already laughing. "Hi, Zendaya. Thank you for having me." Jordan helped Bailey navigate the small step at the entrance, and then she was inside his home. This space that had been frozen in grief for 3 years, now somehow warmer with her presence.
Cecilia appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "You must be Bailey. I'm Cecilia. It's wonderful to finally meet you. Zendaya talks about you constantly." "It's lovely to meet you too," Bailey said, and Jordan could hear the nervousness in her voice. Dinner was chaotic and perfect in equal measure. Zendaya insisted on sitting next to Bailey and spent the entire meal showing her drawings, telling her stories, asking approximately 600 questions. Cecilia was warm and welcoming without being overwhelming, and Jordan couldn't stop watching Bailey fit into his home like she'd always belonged there. She laughed at Cecilia's stories about Jordan as a boy. She admired Zendaya's rock collection with genuine interest. She asked thoughtful questions and gave honest answers, and somehow made the whole house feel lighter. After dinner, Zendaya dragged Bailey off to see her room, leaving Jordan and his mother alone in the kitchen. "She's lovely," Cecilia said quietly, loading the dishwasher. "She is. And you care about her." It wasn't a question. Jordan dried a plate, not meeting his mother's eyes. "She's a friend, Mom." "Jordan, Michael, Miles." Cecilia's voice was gentle but firm. "I raised you. I know your tells, and I've seen the way you look at her." "It's too soon." "Says who?" Says everyone. Says society. Says the voice in my head that sounds like guilt every time I feel something that isn't grief." Cecilia set down the dish she was holding and took her son's hands. "Megan loved you with her whole heart, and she would be devastated to see you turning into a ghost because you think loving again means betraying her memory." She squeezed his hands. "You're allowed to be happy, sweetheart. You're allowed to feel alive again. And that woman in there, she's clearly special. Don't let fear rob you of something beautiful." Before Jordan could respond, Bailey and Zendaya came back, Zendaya chattering excitedly about the book Bailey had promised to lend her. But his mother's words stayed with him long after Bailey went home. They stayed with him when he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. They stayed with him when he passed the photo of Megan on his dresser and didn't feel quite as crushed by guilt as he usually did. Because maybe, just maybe, it was possibly to honor what he'd lost while still reaching for what he'd found. January brought snow and a strange tension Jordan couldn't name. The Saturday lunches continued. Bailey started coming over for dinner once a week. She and Cecilia had become fast friends, often talking for hours while Jordan and Zendaya played games or watched movies. But there was something building between Jordan and Bailey, something unspoken that made the air feel charged whenever they were alone together. One Saturday in late January, after lunch, they went to the park. The snow had stopped, leaving everything pristine and white. Zendaya ran ahead to the playground while Jordan pushed Bailey's wheelchair along the cleared path. "Can I tell you something?" Bailey asked suddenly. "Anything." "I'm scared." Her voice was soft. "Of this. Of how much I've come to depend on your family.
On you. Jordan stopped walking. Why does that scare you? Because everyone leaves. Bailey's words came out rushed, like she needed to say them before she lost her nerve. My parents died. My sister stopped talking to me. And Derek... She stopped. And Jordan realized this was the first time she had said that name out loud to him. Who's Derek? He asked gently.
Bailey took a shaky breath. He was my fiancé. We were together for 5 years. We were supposed to get married 6 months after the accident. Jordan felt something cold settle in his stomach. What happened? He stayed for 3 months, through the surgeries and the initial recovery. He'd visit the hospital, hold my hand, say all the right things. Bailey's voice was hollow. And then the doctors told us about the spinal damage, about how I'd never walk again, about how the injury also meant I couldn't... She paused, gathering herself. I can't have children. The damage was too severe. Bailey, she left 2 weeks after that conversation. Said he didn't sign up to be a caretaker, that he wanted a real partner, not someone who'd be dependent on him for the rest of her life, that he deserved to have the family he'd always dreamed of. She laughed bitterly. 5 years together, and apparently I was only worth loving when I was useful. Jordan felt rage burning in his chest, hot and protective and fierce. He was wrong, he said, his voice tight with emotion. He was a coward and a fool, and he was wrong. Was he, though? Bailey looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I am dependent now. I do need help with things, and I can't give someone children. Stop. Jordan moved around to face her, kneeling in the snow so they were eye level. Listen to me. Needing help doesn't make you a burden. It makes you human. We all need help sometimes. And as for children, he thought about Zendaya, about how perfectly complete his life felt with just her. Biology isn't the only way to build a family. There are so many ways to love, Bailey, so many ways to be whole. You're just saying that to be kind. I'm saying it because it's true. Jordan took her hands. Derek couldn't see your worth, but that's his failure, not yours. You are remarkable, Bailey. Your strength, your talent, your heart. Those things didn't change because of an accident. You're still you, still whole, still worthy of everything good. Bailey was crying now, and Jordan watched her walls crack just slightly. I'm terrified, she whispered. Terrified that if I let myself care about you, about this family, it'll be ripped away. Because that's what happens. People leave. Things end. Sometimes they do, Jordan admitted. I know that better than anyone. But Bailey, living in fear of loss means never really living at all. He was talking to herself, but he was also talking to himself, to the part of him that had been frozen for 3 years, too scared to feel anything real because feeling meant risking pain again. I don't know if I'm brave enough, Bailey said. You don't have to be brave all at once. Just don't run away. Stay. Let us be here for you. Bailey studied his face, this good man who'd shown her nothing but kindness, who looked at her like she mattered, who made her want to believe in second chances. Okay, she finally whispered. I'll try. Jordan squeezed her hands, and something passed between them. Something fragile, but real. In the distance, Zendaya called out for them to come watch her on the swings, and the moment passed. But it had happened. They'd both shown their wounds. They'd both admitted their fears. It was a beginning. By March, Jordan had to admit the truth he'd been avoiding. He was falling in love with Bailey Hale. It wasn't sudden. It was gradual. 1,000 small moments that added up to something undeniable. The way she threw her head back when she laughed. The way she listened to Zendaya with complete attention. The way she'd started sketching again, filling that little notebook with drawings that got bolder each week. The way she looked at him sometimes, when she thought he wasn't watching, like maybe she felt it too. During Saturday lunches when Bailey's hand would accidentally brush his. During movie nights when they'd end up sitting close on the couch. During conversations that stretched late into the evening when everyone else had gone to bed and it was just the two of them, talking about everything and nothing. One April evening, Bailey showed him something she'd been working on. They were alone on his back porch. Cecilia had taken Zendaya for ice cream with obvious deliberateness, and Bailey pulled out her sketchbook with trembling hands. "I want to show you something," she said quietly. I've been drawing again. Really drawing, not just doodling." She opened the sketchbook and Jordan's breath caught. The drawings were stunning. Detailed sketches of faces, hands, moments captured in pencil and charcoal. He recognized Zendaya in several of them. Her laugh, her concentration, her joy. He saw Cecilia baking in the kitchen, Rosie behind the diner counter. And there, near the end, was a sketch of himself. He was looking off to the side, a half smile on his face, and the detail was extraordinary. Every line of exhaustion around his eyes, every hint of grief in his expression, but also hope, light, life returning. "Bailey, these are incredible." "You think so?" She sounded vulnerable, uncertain. "I know so. You have to start painting again, really painting. These are too beautiful to stay trapped in a sketchbook." Bailey bit her lip. "I've been thinking about it, about setting up a small studio in my apartment, maybe trying again." "You should." Jordan turned to her. "Promise me you will." Their faces were close now, closer than they'd ever been. Jordan could see the flecks of gold in Bailey's green eyes, could see the way her breath hitched, could feel the pull between them like gravity. He wanted to kiss her, wanted it so badly it physically hurt. But the ghost of Megan was right there, and the weight of guilt came crashing down. He pulled back. "I should check on dessert," he said awkwardly, standing too quickly. Disappointment flickered across Bailey's face before she masked it with a smile. Of course. But they both knew what had almost happened, and they both knew why it hadn't. Later that night, after Bailey had gone home, Jordan stood in his bedroom looking at the photo of Megan on his dresser. "I don't know what to do," he whispered to the image. "I love her, Meg. I'm falling in love with her, and I don't know if that makes me a terrible person, or if it's okay, or—" He stopped, his voice breaking. The photo didn't answer. Of course it didn't. But in the silence, Jordan thought maybe, just maybe, Megan would want him to be happy. Maybe loving again wasn't betrayal. Maybe it was just life, moving forward while still honoring the past. He just didn't know if he was brave enough to do it. June brought heat and humidity, and a breaking point. Jordan and Bailey had been dancing around their feelings for months now. Stolen glances, hands that touched just a little too long, conversations that stretched into the early morning hours. Cecilia had taken to accidentally leaving them alone at every opportunity, falling asleep during movies, remembering urgent errands, taking Zendaya on suspiciously timed outings. "Your mother is not subtle," Bailey said one evening, after Cecilia had suddenly remembered she needed to take Zendaya to buy new shoes at 8 p.m. "No, she really isn't," Jordan agreed, sitting beside her on the couch. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the TV playing quietly in the background, neither of them really watching it. "Can I ask you something?" Bailey finally said. "Anything." "Why do you pull away?" Her voice was soft, not accusatory. "Every time we get close, every time there's a moment between us, you pull back. And I need to know if it's because you don't feel the same way I do, or if it's something else." Jordan felt his heart hammering. "What way do you feel? Don't do that. Don't deflect." Bailey turned to face him fully. "I've spent 2 years convinced I wasn't worthy of being loved, that Derek was right, that I'm just a burden someone would have to carry. But being with you, with your family, you've made me feel like maybe I was wrong, like maybe I am still worth something." "You are," Jordan said fiercely. "You absolutely are." "Then why won't you let me in? Really in? Bailey's eyes were shining. "I see the way you look at me sometimes. I feel it. This thing between us. But then you shut down. And I don't know if I'm imagining it or if you're just... I'm in love with you." The words burst out of Jordan like they'd been caged too long. Bailey froze. "I'm in love with you," Jordan repeated, quieter now, but no less certain. "I have been for months, maybe longer. I don't even know when it started, if it was that first day in the diner, or when you showed me your drawings, or one of the 1,000 moments in between. But I'm in love with you, Bailey, and it terrifies me."
"Why?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Because I made vows to Megan. Because I promised to love her forever. Because every time I feel happy with you, there's this voice in my head saying I'm betraying her memory, that I don't deserve this, that moving on means forgetting, and I can't." His voice cracked. "I can't forget her, Bailey. She was everything to me." "I would never ask you to forget her," Bailey said, tears streaming down her face now. "Never. She was Zendaya's mother. She was your first love. She deserves to be remembered." "But Jordan," she reached for his hands, "love isn't a zero-sum game. Loving me doesn't diminish what you had with her." "I know that in my head. But my heart, your heart is big enough for both, for the love you had and the love you could have, for past and future. You don't have to choose." Jordan stared at her, this extraordinary woman who'd stumbled into his life and somehow made him want to feel again. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Scared of losing someone again. Scared of failing. Scared of..." Bailey pulled him close, wrapping his arms around him. "I'm scared too," she whispered against his shoulder. "I'm terrified, but I'm more scared of not trying, of letting fear keep me from something real." They held each other like that for a long moment, both of them shaking slightly, both of them on the edge of something huge and terrifying and beautiful. When they finally pulled apart, Jordan cupped Bailey's face in his hands. "I love you," he said again, and this time it felt like freedom instead of confession. "I love the way you listen to my daughter like she's the most important person in the world. I love your strength and your art and the way you laugh. I love that you're honest about your pain instead of hiding it. I love you, Bailey Hale." Bailey was sobbing now, but she was smiling too. "I love you too," she managed. "I've been so afraid to say it, so afraid I wasn't enough because of the wheelchair, because I can't have children, because Derek made me believe I was broken." "You're not broken," Jordan said fiercely. "You're remarkable, and you're more than enough. Zendaya is enough for me. This, you and me, and the life we could build, that would be everything." And then he kissed her. It was gentle and desperate, and tasted like tears and hope. It was 3 years of grief meeting 2 years of pain, and somehow creating something beautiful from the wreckage. When they broke apart, they were both crying and laughing at the same time. "So what now?" Bailey asked. "Now we try," Jordan said simply. "We take it slow. We figure it out together. We let ourselves be scared, but do it anyway." "Okay," Bailey whispered. "Okay." They kissed again, softer this time, and Jordan felt something in his chest that had been locked tight for 3 years finally open. He was in love. He was terrified. He was happy. He was alive. The months that followed were the happiest Jordan could remember since before Megan died. He and Bailey took things carefully, building their relationship on the foundation of friendship they'd already created. They went on actual dates, dinners and movies and long drives through the Tennessee countryside. They talked about everything, their fears, their dreams, their scars. Bailey started painting again. Jordan had helped her convert a corner of her apartment into a small studio, and she'd thrown herself into it with an intensity that was beautiful to watch. The canvases were different now.
darker in places, but somehow more hopeful. Abstract pieces that showed the journey from pain to healing. "You should do an exhibition," Jordan told her one evening, studying a piece she'd just finished. It was stunning. Deep blues giving way to gold and amber, like dawn breaking through storm clouds. "That dream died a long time ago," Bailey said, but there was less conviction in her voice than before. "Dreams don't die. They just wait for us to be brave enough to try again." Jordan turned to her. "You're ready, Bailey. Your work is incredible. People need to see it." Bailey bit her lip, considering. "Would you come to the opening?" "I'd be honored." "Then maybe I'll contact some galleries, see if anyone's interested." Zendaya was thriving. She'd started calling Bailey her almost mom and made elaborate plans for their future together. "When you and Daddy get married, can I help plan the wedding? And can we get a dog? Bailey likes dogs, right?" Jordan and Bailey would exchange glances over her head, both amused and touched by her certainty. Cecilia was delighted. She'd taken to inviting Bailey over constantly, teaching her family recipes, sharing stories about Jordan's childhood, treating her like the daughter she'd never had. "You're good for him," Cecilia told Bailey one evening while they were cooking together. "I haven't seen my son this alive in years." "He's good for me too," Bailey admitted. "I'd forgotten what it felt like to be truly happy, to feel like I belonged somewhere." "You do belong here," Cecilia said firmly. "You're family now, Bailey. Whether there's a ring on your finger or not, you're family."
By November, almost exactly 2 years since that first Saturday at Rosie's, Jordan knew what he wanted to do. He drove to the jewelry store on his lunch break, his palms sweating, his heart racing. He looked at dozens of rings before finding the right one. Simple but beautiful, elegant without being ostentatious. A ring worthy of the extraordinary woman he was going to give it to. He told his mother and Zendaya that evening, "I want to propose to Bailey on Christmas Eve at Rosie's." Zendaya screamed so loud the neighbors probably heard. She jumped up and down, already planning every detail. "Can I help? Please, please, please. I want to make decorations and invite everyone and—" "Yes, you can help, okay? But it needs to be a surprise, okay? You can't tell Bailey." "I won't tell, I promise." Zendaya was practically vibrating with excitement. Cecilia just smiled and hugged her son tight. "She'll say yes. And Megan would be so happy for you both." Jordan let himself believe it was true. Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in fresh snow and anticipation. Jordan had told Bailey they were going to Rosie's for their traditional holiday dinner, just the 4 of them, nothing special. She'd believed him completely. What Bailey didn't know was that Rosie's was filled with people. Neighbors, co-workers, friends, Bailey's physical therapist, even the gallery owner hosting her spring exhibition. Everyone who'd become part of their story. When Bailey entered the cafe, her eyes went wide. What is all this?" "You'll see," Zendaya said mysteriously. They made their way to their table by the window, and Jordan's heart hammered against his ribs. All his practiced words fled when he looked at Bailey, snowflakes melting in her hair, confused but happy.
He stood, and the cafe fell silent. "Bailey Hale, 2 years ago you walked into this diner looking for a place to sit. My daughter wouldn't let you leave. You came into our lives when we were broken, when I was just surviving, when we both needed proof that people could heal." He pulled out the small velvet box. Bailey's hands flew to her mouth. "You made me believe I could live again. Love again." He opened the box, the ring catching the Christmas lights. "You've brought color back into a world that had gone gray." Jordan knelt beside her wheelchair. "Will you marry me, Bailey? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you just how extraordinary you are?" Bailey was sobbing, nodding before she could speak. "Yes," she finally managed. "Yes, yes, yes." Jordan slipped the ring on with shaking hands and kissed her while the diner erupted in applause. Zendaya was jumping up and down screaming, "She said yes! I knew she would!" And at their table by the window, their table where it had all begun, Jordan and Bailey held each other, two broken pieces that had somehow become whole. "I love you," Jordan whispered against her hair. "I love you too," Bailey whispered back. "Thank you for asking me to share your table." Jordan laughed through his tears. "Best decision I ever made."
The wedding was perfect, small and intimate. Held at Rosie's on a sunny April afternoon, exactly 4 months after Jordan's Christmas Eve proposal. Bailey wore a simple white dress, a crown of wildflowers in her hair. Zendaya was her maid of honor, taking the role with utmost seriousness, and when Jordan kissed his bride, every person in that room believed in second chances. Bailey moved into the house officially the week after. Her studio equipment filled the spare room. Her wheelchair became as permanent a fixture as the furniture. Her laughter filled rooms that had been silent for too long. She was home. The first year of marriage was everything they'd hoped for and more. They built routines, Saturday lunches at Rosie's that now included Cecilia, Sunday morning pancakes where everyone took turns being chef, movie nights where they'd fall asleep tangled together on the couch. Zendaya thrived with her new family structure, calling Bailey Mom naturally now without the almost qualifier. They traveled too. A honeymoon to the Smoky Mountains, weekend trips to Memphis and Chattanooga, day drives through Tennessee countryside. Bailey painted landscapes while Jordan and Zendaya explored hiking trails, and in the evenings they'd all gather to watch sunsets that seemed painted just for them. It was the life neither Jordan nor Bailey had thought possible. And then, in May, just over a year after their wedding, everything changed again.
Bailey had been feeling off for weeks. Nausea that hit without warning. Exhaustion that sleep couldn't cure. She'd dismissed it as stress. Her first major solo exhibition was scheduled for October, and the preparation was intense. But when the symptoms persisted into their second week, Cecilia pulled her aside. "Have you seen a doctor?" "It's probably just a bug, Cecilia, or exhaustion from all the painting." "Humor an old woman," Cecilia said in that tone that meant the discussion was over. "Go to the doctor. Today." So Bailey went, expecting antibiotics or a lecture about work-life balance. She came home 3 hours later in a complete daze. Jordan found her in the kitchen, staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else. "Bailey, what happened? What did the doctor say?" She looked up at him, her eyes wide with shock and wonder and disbelief. "I'm pregnant." The world stopped. Jordan sat down hard. "But the doctors, after your accident, said—" "I know what they said." Bailey's voice was shaking. "They said the spinal damage made conception impossible. They were certain. But, Jordan," she laughed, the sound almost hysterical, "they ran the test 3 times. There's no mistake. I'm 6 weeks pregnant." 6 weeks, Jordan repeated, his mind struggling to process. "But that means—" Bailey's eyes filled with tears. "Jordan, this shouldn't be possible. Every doctor told me it couldn't happen, but it did." Jordan crossed the kitchen in 2 strides, dropping to his knees in front of her. "We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," Bailey confirmed. They held each other, crying and laughing, neither quite able to believe it was real. Cecilia appeared in the doorway, took one look at them, and understood immediately. "Oh, my stars," she breathed, her own eyes filling. "Oh, my sweet girl." "I'm going to be a grandmother again," she whispered.
"You already are one, Mom," Jordan said, pulling her into their embrace. "You've always been one." They told Zendaya that evening after dinner. "Z, we have something important to tell you," Jordan began, glancing at Bailey nervously. Zendaya's eyes went wide. "Are we getting a dog?" Despite the emotion, both adults laughed. "Not exactly," Bailey said softly. Remember how we talked about how babies grow in their mommy's tummies? Zendaya nodded slowly, her expression shifting to wonder. Are you... I'm going to have a baby, Bailey confirmed. You're going to be a big sister. The scream that erupted from Zendaya could probably be heard in the next county. She launched herself at Bailey, hugging her carefully but with explosive joy. I'm getting a baby sister, or brother, but I hope it's a sister. She was talking so fast the words tumbled over each other. Can I help pick names? Can I help decorate the nursery? Can I teach the baby how to draw and read and... Yes, to all of it, Jordan laughed, ruffling her hair. But, Z, we need you to understand something. This pregnancy is special. The doctors didn't think Bailey could have babies, so it's a miracle. And that means we need to be extra careful and patient, okay? Zendaya's face grew serious. I'll be so careful. I promise. I'll help with everything. She turned to Bailey, placing both hands gently on her still flat stomach. Hi, baby. I'm Zendaya. I'm going to be your big sister, and I'm going to love you so much. Bailey burst into fresh tears, pulling Zendaya close.
The pregnancy was monitored closely. Bailey was classified as high risk given her spinal injury and the medical impossibility of her conception. She had appointments every 2 weeks, then every week as she progressed. But miracle after miracle, everything looked perfect. The baby was growing exactly as expected. Bailey's body was handling the pregnancy well, despite her paralysis. Every ultrasound showed a healthy, thriving child. In July, they learned they were having a girl. Jordan held Bailey's hand during that ultrasound, both of them staring at the screen in wonder as the technician pointed out tiny fingers and toes, a strong heartbeat, a profile that already looked like it belonged to their family. "A girl," Bailey breathed. "We're having a daughter." Zendaya, who'd been allowed to come to this appointment, was beside herself. "I'm getting a sister. I knew it. I'm going to teach her everything." They started preparing the nursery, the guest room transformed with soft yellows and greens, hand-painted murals Bailey created while Zendaya helped by adding butterflies and flowers. Jordan built a crib, his hands remembering the one he'd built for Zendaya 8 years ago, his heart full in ways he'd forgotten were possible.
Bailey's exhibition opened in October, when she was 5 months pregnant, her belly round and obvious now. The gallery was packed. Every canvas sold within the first hour. Critics called her work transcendent, a visual journey of trauma transformed into triumph, proof that art can heal. Bailey moved through the crowd in her wheelchair, radiant despite her exhaustion, one hand always resting on her belly. Jordan stayed close, proud and protective, watching his wife shine. At the end of the evening, they gathered everyone in the center of the gallery. "We have one more piece to unveil," Bailey announced, "something very personal." Cecilia wheeled out a covered canvas. When she pulled away the cloth, the room collectively gasped. It was a sunrise, gold and pink and soft yellow breaking over dark water, and painted in elegant script across the dawn sky, Emerald Rose Miles, expected February. "We're having a daughter," Jordan said, his arm around Bailey's shoulders. "We're naming her Emerald because emeralds are formed under intense pressure and heat. They're rare and precious and impossibly beautiful." His voice caught. "Just like this miracle we've been given." The room erupted in celebration, tears and hugs and congratulations that lasted well into the night. Emerald Rose Miles came into the world on a snowy February morning, 2 weeks before her due date. The labor was long, nearly 18 hours, but uncomplicated. Jordan never left Bailey's side, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, reminding her how strong she was, how loved. When Emerald finally arrived at 6:47 a.m., 6 pounds, 5 ounces, with a shock of dark hair and her mother's delicate features, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. She was perfect. Cecilia held her first,
tears streaming down her face, whispering blessings in Spanish that her own mother had whispered over Jordan decades ago. Then Zendaya, so careful and gentle, her 9-year-old hands cradling her sister like she was made of glass. "Hi, Emerald," Zendaya whispered, her voice full of wonder. "I'm Zendaya. I'm your big sister. I've been waiting so long to meet you." She touched Emerald's tiny hand, and the baby's fingers wrapped around hers instinctively. "I'm going to teach you everything. How to draw and read and be brave. How to make Grandma laugh and help Daddy with his projects. I'm going to love you forever and protect you always. I promise." Emerald made a small sound, not quite a cry, just an acknowledgement of her sister's voice, and Zendaya's entire face lit up. Jordan stood beside Bailey's hospital bed, looking at his wife, exhausted, radiant, holding their daughter with tears streaming down her face. "She's here," Bailey whispered in disbelief. "She's really here. She's real." "She's perfect," Jordan said, his own voice thick with emotion. "You're perfect. This is perfect." He looked around the room, at his mother crying happy tears, at Zendaya gazing at her sister with pure adoration, at Bailey cradling the daughter doctors they'd never have. He thought about that Saturday afternoon nearly 3 years ago, about the woman who'd been rejected 3 times, about his daughter's fierce heart refusing to let cruelty win, about all the broken pieces that had somehow impossibly fit together into something whole. He thought about Megan, and he felt not guilt, not anymore, but gratitude, deep, abiding gratitude for the love they'd shared, for the daughter she'd given him, for teaching him that hearts are big enough to hold both grief and joy. And he knew, somehow he knew with absolute certainty, that she was smiling down at them from somewhere beyond the stars, proud of the father he'd become, happy for the love he'd found, blessing this impossible family they'd created. "Thank you," he whispered to Bailey, kissing her forehead, "for saying yes, for staying, for giving us this miracle." Bailey looked up at him, at Zendaya, at Cecilia, at tiny Emerald sleeping peacefully in her arms, this family that had found each other in the most unexpected way. "Best decision I ever made," she whispered back. And in that hospital room, surrounded by love and miracles and second chances that shouldn't have been possible, they understood what it truly meant to live again. Not just survive, not just exist, but really, fully, beautifully live. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, please don't let it end here. Let it remind you, kindness still matters, compassion still changes lives, and hope is never wasted. Subscribe and be part of our Soul Lift Stories family, where every story lifts the spirit and reminds us that light always finds its way back. And if this moment moved you, share it, because sometimes sharing hope is the kindest thing we can do.